Bum, 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Blah, 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 bum, bum. Hello. What's up, sexy people? Are you sexy like me? Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me? Don't you wish your girlfriend was a freak like me? Don't ya? Don't ya, don't ya, don't ya, don't ya, don't ya? Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me? Don't you wish your girlfriend was a freak like me? Don't ya? Don't ya, don't ya, don't ya, don't ya, don't ya? Don't ya? Well, it's not a joke, really, is it? Don't ya? Now, the answer to that question is pussy, cat, dolls. Is that, no, not really. I mean, I guess you're right. Because my girlfriend's pretty hot. I'm not gonna lie to you. Actually, all my women ever are pretty hot. I'm not gonna lie to you, so I don't really kind of feel that way. I mean, I guess you're okay. I have a lot of sexy Latina women. Though, so many Latinas, and they're so sexy, they're so beautiful. Love them so much, I almost can't get enough of them. And, you go down to Miami, and you hang around Miami for a little bit, like me, I love Miami. And then you'll see what I mean, yeah. I love them so much, they're gorgeous, they're everywhere, they're beautiful. I love Miami. Yeah, I love it. And the reason I love it is not just because of that. It's because of so many other reasons, but I also just love it. I love Miami. And Miami loves me. And I love LA. Well, I loved LA. I love old school LA. I love golden Hollywood LA. I love old LA. And old LA loves me too. It's right in my veins, it's in my blood. They love me. I'm one of them. They're one of me. But this new LA, this woke, lost their mind, this transgender, hyperbolic, woke version of LA, I don't love them. And they don't love me either. They hate me. They want to kill me. But they're a bunch of losers, so who really cares what they think? And I used to love New York too, and I still do have love for New York. All of my mom and dad's family come from New York. My whole family's from New York. And my mom was born and raised in Brooklyn. Shout out Brooklyn. And most of my family is still up there. My entire mom's side of the family is from New York, New York City. And my entire dad's side of the family is from Buffalo. And I love the realness of New York. I love everything about New York. But New York has become a mess too, sadly. And even though I still got a lot of family up there, it's a shame what's happened to New York City. And now you see Mom Dummy and this clown. But don't worry, we'll get rid of that fool. And I love Miami. Miami is now my new favorite place. And I love Reno. And I love Vegas. And I love Kansas City. I lived in Reno before I was here. And I was born in Kansas City. And I loved LA, but it turned woke on me. And I love New York, and it's lost its mind on me. I didn't love Miami because I had never been there up until last year, and now I love Miami. It's like maybe my favorite city on the planet. And the beautiful thing about Miami is they're like New York because of their variety of different cultures. They have somebody from everywhere in Miami. The whole world is in Miami. And I love them because of they're like LA or old school LA, where they are still alive and they're vibing and they got their head in the clouds, so to speak. But what that really just means is they're like me, they like nice things, they like flashy things, they like things, and it's not lame, they're not losers. And they're filled with beautiful people and artistic people, creative people. That's why I like them, like LA. But they're real though in Miami. They're a lot more real about it. It's like that's why I say Miami's like a mixture of New York and LA. Because they're filled with beautiful people and they're all flashing lights, like LA, but they're real and very multicultural like New York City. And they haven't lost their minds either. So while New York and LA have both gone so woke it's ridiculous, Miami still kind of realizes that there's only two genders. And, they have a beautiful straight dating scene down there, which is great for straight people like me. And they're beautiful. And as if that wasn't already more than enough, you throw tropical weather on there and you throw all of that beautiful Latin American culture down there, and not just Cuba. I'm not just talking about Cuban. If you don't know Miami, then you probably think I'm just talking about Cuban culture. 1980s Miami was Cuban culture. Even 20 years ago was Cuban culture. But now Miami is a lot more than Cuban culture. It's every Latin American country you could think of culture. It's not just the Cubans. Miami's now 82% Hispanic. And they have every Latin American culture you could possibly think of there. They have everybody. It's not just Cuban anymore. They got Argentina and Colombia and Chile and Brazil and Peru and Mexico, Guatemala. Everything you can think of is there. Everything. It's everything. Beautiful Colombian women down there that love me. Beautiful Argentinian women down there that love me. Beautiful Cubans that love me. Beautiful Brazilians down there that love me. I meet people from Rio and Sao Paulo. And, I got to go to Brazil. Brazil's a beautiful place as well. So so Miami is like Latin America mixed with LA and New York. It doesn't even feel like it's the United States of America. It's like, it feels like it's an international island port off in the middle of somewhere that nobody knows about. It's like, it's beautiful, bro. It's a utopia. And throw some tropical weather on there, and you got yourself a beautiful city. I love Miami. And I'm going to move down there eventually. Eventually, that's probably my new home. Like Trump. Moved to West Palm Beach. My aunt was in West Palm Beach. Don't get me wrong, West Palm is cool. Florida's cool as a state. I like Orlando. Orlando's cool. Florida's cool as a state. West Palm is great. Boca's great. Fort Lauderdale's great. But none of them are Miami. If you haven't been all the way down there, all the way down south, you might not know it is it or not. But even though Fort Lauderdale is like right down the road from Miami, the minute you get from Fort Lauderdale to Miami, it's like going through a portal, and you're in a whole other universe when you land down there on South Beach. It's like Neverland down there. People call it the greatest, the world's best kept secret, and that's really kind of what it is, isn't it? But anyways, most likely my future home. The only thing that I have a problem with is hurricanes. That's the only thing that agitates me about that place. But I've dealt with tornadoes, and you can't let that kind of thing stop you from living your life. So you just gotta deal with it, I guess. And then, yeah, yeah, this is the Truth Rebellion. Welcome to another episode of the Truth Rebellion, where truth is our creed and our motto and our reason for doing everything in life. We don't bend, we don't bow, we don't break, we don't compromise. If it's true, we say it. In a world where lies have become law, the truth has become a rebellion. We are fans of all things true, all things real, and a hater of all things fake. We talk about everything on the show you could possibly think of. We talk about any subject. There is no subject that is off limits here. There is absolutely no subject off limits here. I will talk about anything. People be like, well, Josh, so it's a political podcast. It's really not. I mean, it's really not. You probably might catch that vibe when you hear me talking. And that's because it's the Truth Rebellion. I'm the Truth Rebellion. I'm Joshua Schutz. And this is the Truth Rebellion. But really, it's a Truth Rebellion is what this podcast is. It's a rebellion for the truth is what it is. Now, because politics and the international scale hosts so much of our time and has invaded every single facet of human society, it has to be talked about. Because this is the Truth Rebellion. If listen to this. If I said that this podcast was the Truth Rebellion, and then I went out of my way to shun politics, or to not talk about them, or to not look you in the face and tell you what I actually think about them, wouldn't that make me a hypocrite? Wouldn't that mean that this wasn't the Truth Rebellion? Wouldn't that mean that this was just another mainstream media stay or whatever, another podcast about nothing where we try our best to attempt to appeal and appease to the people that watch us and swim in safe waters and not say what we really think and stay in the shallow kiddie pool instead of the deep end, and then we would try to only stay on to subjects that don't hurt people's personal opinions and pronouns, and not try to offend people with our offensive truths. Because we here at the Truth Rebellion believe that the truth is on the offensive, not the defensive. And that's why it's offensive. Wouldn't it be hypocritical of me if I pretended not to talk about politics? If I didn't talk about that big giant elephant in the room, wouldn't you say, is it really the truth? Is it really talk about the truth? Is this the Truth Rebellion? Or is this the plastic rebellion? Is this the fake rebellion? Is this the don't talk about it if it's too controversial rebellion? Is this the lie rebellion? We don't want that one. We already saw that one, and that one didn't work too good, did it? That's the whole reason we're in this mess. Lucifer's lie rebellion. Yeah, well, guess what? We rebel against that because this is Truth Rebellion. Praise Jesus Christ. You know the truth, and truth shall set you free. Yeah. Now, that would make me hypocritical, wouldn't it? If I avoided the elephant in the room, or if I talked about it, but I didn't genuinely tell you what I thought, or I hid certain dark motives from everybody in my heart that I didn't want nobody to know about, that would make this not the Truth Rebellion. And then we would become the exact opposite of what we were meant to be, and we would be doing what everybody else is doing and what you could find anywhere else on the face of the planet, because it's just too easy to live life that way and not tell the truth to people's face when it's so simple. Tell them to their face what you really, truly think, feel, and believe. It's that simple, right? But we don't just talk about politics. We talk about anything. Any subject is on the table. Literally. No subject is off limits. We talk about anything. I'll talk about it all, man. We'll talk about conspiracies. We'll talk about every conspiracy. We'll talk about drugs. We'll talk about psychedelics. We'll talk about spiritual belief systems. Talk about the pyramids of Giza. We'll talk about UFOs. We'll talk about pixies and fairies. We'll talk about people seeing machine elves when they take DMT. Even though I've never taken DMT. But we'll talk about spiritual experiences. We'll talk about different beliefs. We'll talk about whatever. AI Atlas. And the planets lining up in the solar system. We'll talk about advanced mathematics, artificial intelligence, and how it works. And I might actually do that because I actually do know more than the average person about AI, and I could actually probably maybe even give a mini crash course on how it works and all that. And computer programming. Both of them are important, and they build on each other, really. We talk about the CIA, the NSA. We expose the hypocrisy of the right, Mitch McConnell, and the left. I was going to say Nancy Pelosi, but then I thought of the entire left wing, and I couldn't find one who wasn't. So we talk about everything. It doesn't matter what it is. And we discuss anything too, and we will not silence or censor anybody at all ever. We do not do it. If someone comes on this show, we will not censor them. And we're already working on, getting a few people on here. There's already talks in the mix with various individuals. But we will not censor anyone that comes on this show. That's just a forewarning for you. We will not censor them. We may not necessarily agree with what they say. And we may even push back on them sometimes if we don't agree on certain things, or say, well, we don't believe in this, but we believe in this. We believe 50 here and 50 there, or 70-30, or whatever it is. But we will not silence them. We'll not say, oh, well, I know that's your opinion, but you can't say it because of blah, 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 blah. Whoever it is doesn't like it. We're not going to do that. Let them say whatever they think, because when the full truth is revealed in that world, people can define and decipher for themselves what they think is real and what they think isn't, and what's true and what's not, and they can decide what they believe and what they don't. They don't need us to come in there and say, here's what you need to know. You little 15-year-old play bunny kindergartner that needs to have somebody come and explain it to you 15 times over like you're a freaking idiot and don't know what you're doing. No, okay, this is not kindergarten. This is not a government program. This is not HUD housing or welfare or your stupid job, your stupid boss at your job. We don't think that you're an idiot here. We don't explain the same thing over to you 15 times in a row and try to do it real slow because we think that you don't understand what we're saying. No, because we're not idiots. Only slow people with low IQs do that. people with high IQs, like myself, we assume that the people that we're talking to have a high IQ too. And they have the ability to open up their mind and figure out what they think without needing someone else to come and tell them. Right? We don't underestimate anyone. Maybe we even overestimate. And maybe it's probably better to do that than to underestimate, isn't it? Yeah. So any subject is on the table. Of course, we talk about politics. We talk about anything. Talk about Nikola Tesla, who is an interesting one, broski. He's an interesting one. And that's why, I don't know, I had something in my head that was, I was what I was saying something, and I can't. What was I thinking? There was something going on inside of this. I was thinking about something, and I can't remember what it was. I don't know. Well, no, I do know. I know it's somewhere up here. I know where it is. It's somewhere up here. We won't censor anybody that comes on the show. And a lot of people probably get mad about that. They'll probably get upset about that. Well, Josh, you let so and so onto your show. That's the reason why I don't condemn Tucker Carlson for putting Nick Fuentes on there, because we would let anyone on the show. I don't care who it is. We'll talk to anybody. Doesn't matter to me. And that's because how else are people going to know what anybody thinks unless they listen to them talk? You know what I mean? But whatever. So, I watch more clips of Nick Fuentes. That's a Spanish name, by the way, isn't it? Fuentes. And Saint Nick, he's interesting. I don't know, man. I still just don't know what I think. I can't figure out if he's trying to be a hyperbolic parody or if he really is a outspoken Nazi. I don't know which one it is. If he's an outspoken Nazi, of course we would condemn his political opinions. Still have a conversation with him, though. Just to pull out of him what he's really thinking. If he's a hyperbolic person that's doing a parody, I think he's doing a really good job at it because it's definitely getting people's attention. That's interesting. And we would still talk about him on that subject as well. But, what I think, too, is that, well, here we are. We're here now. Marjorie Taylor Greene has announced that she's being removed from politics. And it's all centered around Israel, right? There's this MAGA civil war that is now centered around Israel. That's centered around Israel. I mean, that's what it's centered around. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not pro-Israel. Nick Fuentes is not pro-Israel. Candace Owens is not pro-Israel. The Tate brothers are not pro-Israel. The Hodge twins are not pro-Israel. Tucker Carlson is not pro-Israel. It's a lot of people. That's a lot of names. Kirk Cameron, interestingly enough, not pro-Israel. Then you have a lot of people that are. Donald Trump is pro-Israel. Laura Loomer's pro-Israel. Well, essentially the entire right wing out of everybody I just mentioned is pro-Israel. Now, I take a very definitive stance on this, and I would tell you straight to your face, I am pro-Israel. Okay? I am probably the most pro-Israel person that you've ever met in your life. I'm pretty up there. I'm pro-Israel. Do I hate people that are not pro-Israel? No, not essentially. Do I think that they're all anti-Semitic? No. I mean, I don't think that people are automatically anti-Semitic because they are not pro-Israel. But I also don't think that they're right about their opinion or that they're onto something when they're anti-Israel, right? I think that Candace and Tucker and Nick Fuentes especially, and the Hodge twins and MGT, or MTG, I think these people are all wrong about their stance with Israel. 100%. I do not believe that Israel is a terrorist state. I do not believe that the Jews did 9/11. I do not believe that Bibi Netanyahu is a terrorist. I do not believe that Israel are a bunch of war criminals. I do not believe any of that nonsense for a second, for a minute. I love Bibi Netanyahu, and I love Israel. And whatever that means, whatever that makes people want to call me, I don't really care, to be honest. If they want to call me a Zionist and say I get paid $7,000 for post on Twitter, which I've been accused of by like dozens of people. Like, where's the money, man? Where's that $7,000 per post? I post quite a bit. I'd have over 100 grand right now. Where's that 100 grand? And when's somebody gonna send me 100 grand for posting? Hey, BB, you want to send me 100 grand for posting? You want to pay me $7,000 a post? I have over $100,000. I do it anyway. I'm going to post pro-Israel stuff anyways. Might as well get paid $100,000 for doing it too. Where's the money? Where am I getting 100 grand posting for Israel? Where's that? That's crazy. I don't know where they come up with this stuff, man. Yeah, I just getting paid $7,000 a post, dude. What are you talking about? or that's just a bunch of nonsense. And people are being paid to say that people are being paid to post. I don't know. Because if you say that, I do think that people get paid on the internet for posting a variety of different things from different subjects and probably have for a very long time in any direction. But I also think that if you are saying that I'm getting paid that money, then that makes me believe that the whole thing is fake, because I know that I'm not getting paid that money. And if I'm not getting paid that money, and you are thoroughly convinced that I have to be one of the ones getting paid that money, then that makes me wonder if anyone is getting paid that money. Or if that's just all made up. That's just a whole made up thing. It's just a whole made up narrative, and none of it's real. It's almost like they can't believe that somebody would just be pro-Israel without being paid money for it. And that's one of the things that makes it hard to believe them and take them seriously, because Ray, a drop of gold inside. If this is Nazi Germany, it's one of the things that would be hard to take them seriously, because if you honestly have a hard time realizing that there's a whole lot of people, millions of people in America that are pro-Israel organically and authentically, and not because they're being politically paid or because they have a secret tie to the Israeli government and Mossad. If you have a hard time understanding that, then it shows your ignorance towards the American people. It shows a lack of awareness, a lack of self-awareness, and it makes people not take you seriously even less. So, for instance, what I mean by that is this. I do not believe that Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, etc., I don't believe any one of these people was paid $7,000 to say that they hate Israel. I don't believe that they were paid by Palestine or any other governmental actor or organization or group of people or whatever it is to say that they are anti-Israel. I don't believe that. When I see people post anti-Israel memes on Twitter, I don't say, I bet they were paid $7,000 to say that. I don't think that they have a secret connection to a intelligence agency of Saudi Arabia because they posted something anti-Israel. I think that is their organic, actual, authentic viewpoints of Israel, Israeli policy, America's foreign policy with Israel, and with the Jews. I think they really feel and believe that. I disagree with them, but I think it's I think that's the way that their mind thinks. So that's why it's hard for me to, because that's not a lack of self-awareness. I don't lack the awareness that certain people feel that way. I don't have such a lack of self-awareness that I don't understand that people could not possibly disagree with me. Or they have to be getting paid money from a government agency. Like, I don't have that lack of self-awareness. And that's the proof to me that they do, because they have a hard time believing or understanding or accepting the fact that I disagree with them. Period. You understand what I'm saying? And, the same people that say stuff like that, it's like they were accused of being a secret Russian asset and having a phone to Vladimir Putin in the middle of the Kremlin in Moscow because they didn't support the Ukrainian war. And it's like, okay, if you were accused not too long ago, 5 minutes ago, you were accused of being a Russian asset who had a secret phone jack to Vladimir Putin in Moscow for not being pro-Ukraine and being paid money by the Russian government to post pro-Russia, anti-Ukraine memes. And now all of a sudden you don't understand and can't understand that somebody is not a pro-Mossad paid agent who has a secret line to Bibi Netanyahu because they say pro-Israel things. Like, it's just stupid to me, bro. Look. Here's the thing with the pro-Israel stance. Okay? In no sense of the measure does it make sense to be anti-Israel. That's how I feel about it. It does not make sense. In any sense of the metric, it does not make sense. Number one, from a spiritual and religious perspective, obviously it does not make sense. If you're a Christian, it does not make sense to be anti-Israel or anti-Jew. Because Paul the Apostle was a Jew. Peter was a Jew. All the disciples were Jewish. Everyone who wrote the New Testament was Jewish. All of the people in the Old Testament, from Moses to Abraham to David to Elijah to all the prophets, all the way down, was Jewish. And everyone who wrote the Old Testament was Jewish. You wouldn't even know that there was a Bible if it wasn't for the Jews. You wouldn't even know who Jesus Christ was if it wasn't for the Jews. Jesus Christ himself was a Jew. Okay, so that's first and foremost, right? Then, to further affirm that, Paul the Apostle writes an entire chapter about the entire subject on purpose because he already sensed that there was anti-Semitism that was starting to rise. And that's why he wrote Romans chapter 11 and 12 on the express subject itself, where he says, okay, and he says, just to sum it up, why would you turn against the Jews when the root is holy? You're the branches, they're the root. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't even know anything. You were grafted in, they're the original thing. Don't turn your back on them. Don't despise them because the root is holy. Don't boast against them because even if you do boast against them, you're really endangering yourself. Because if God would turn his back on his firstborn, how much easier would it be for him to turn his back on a grafted in branch? If God can cut off a branch straight from him, why could he not cut off a grafted branch? And the point he's trying to make is he's saying, it's an insult to God's character to say that God has turned against the Jews or Israel, because what you're essentially saying is that somebody who has a baby, a blood-born baby, and then they adopt a child, that they would abandon their blood-born baby for their adopted child. That's the insinuation that you're saying when you say that Jesus Christ, that Jehovah gets rid of Israel. That's what you're saying. And then Paul is challenging you on that, saying, if that were true, how could an adopted child who is legally someone's child trust their father to not abandon them when they watch them abandon their own blood-bought child? Right? That's what he was saying, right? Now, a lot of the arguments there are going to be, well, Israel's not the same Israel, Jews ain't the same Jews, blah, 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 and all this nonsense. Well, there's some pushback there because that's incorrect. And how do you know that's incorrect is because of a couple of things. One, Paul the Apostle was a Jew, right? He was a Jew by ethnicity, and he became a Christian. So Paul is not talking to Jews in the book of Romans. He's talking to Christians. Well, he can't be talking to Jewish Christians. If you continue to read the Bible in the book of Acts, you notice that Paul was called the apostle to the Gentiles. So everything that Paul talks about is to Gentiles. So we know that Paul's talking to non-ethnic Jews who are in Christ. As an ethnic Jew in Christ, he's talking to non-ethnic Jews that are in Christ about ethnic Jews that are not in Christ. How do we know? Well, if he's an ethnic Jew in Christ, he can't be talking to ethnic Jews in Christ because they're Jews and Christians. He can't be talking to ethnic Jews that are not in Christ because he's talking about being in Christ. He can't be talking to non-Gentiles who are or Gentiles who are non-Christians because he's talking about being in Christ. He has to be talking to Gentiles, non-ethnic Jews that are Christians. So if there's three groups of people, right? If you have non-born-again Jews, Messianic completed Jews, Jews who were born again, and Gentile Christians, and if the person talking is one group, Jew and Christian, then he can only be talking about two other groups, non-Christian Jew and non-Jewish Christian. And when he expressly speaks out, he tells you that the subject of what he's writing about is non-Christian Jews. So he's talking to somebody about non-Christian Jews. Well, he's not going to talk to non-Christian Jews about non-Christian Jews. And he's not talking to ethnic Jewish Christians because he is one. And in other parts of the Bible, he does talk to them. So he has to be talking to non-ethnic Jewish Christians. And why does he tell a non-ethnic Jewish Christian, a Gentile Christian, don't boast against the non-Christian Jews? They never boasted against Paul. They weren't boasting against Jewish Christians. So they're boasting against non-Christian Jews. And he says, don't do that, because God has invested too much in Israel. He's talking about physical Israel. He's invested too much in Israel to turn his back against them. How much more could God turn his back on you if he wouldn't keep them, is what he says. And I mean, I don't see how it's so easy. It's right there in black and white. It's hard to miss. And people say, well, we're the new Israel. Then why did Paul say Israel in that chapter? Who is he talking about? When Paul said that he would separate himself from Christ so that Israel could be saved, who was he talking about? He's not talking about Christians. He's talking about physical Israel. Yeah, well, they fell apart and were disannulled across their... Yeah, Jesus Christ said that would happen. He said that the Bible prophesies that the Jews will be spread across the world. And if you continue to read, it prophesies that they will be brought back to the Holy Land before Christ comes back. And that's what happened. When Israel became a state again. That's a fulfillment of prophecy. I mean, it's plain as day. It's right in your face. It's hard to miss. It's really hard to miss. And so, in the book of Revelation, Jesus comes back to the Mount of Olives in Israel and says that the Jews in Israel finally call upon the Messiah. So, if modern-day Israel and the Jews are not the Jews and the Israel of the Bible, why are they in the book of Revelation? Well, that Israel in the book of Revelation is talking about Christians. Well, is it? Because it says that it's in physical modern-day Israel because it comes back to the Mount of Olives and comes back to Jerusalem. So that's the physical Middle East, where modern-day Israel is today. That's Jerusalem, and that's where the Mount of Olives is. So you're saying that all the Christians are in the Middle East when Christ comes back? Also, ponder the thought that the Bible says it's not until they're surrounded by their enemies that they'll call upon the name of Jesus. So if Israel in the book of Revelation is talking about spiritual Israel and not physical Israel, why does Jesus say that he doesn't come back until they call upon the name of Christ? If they're already Christians and born again, why have they denied Christ and have not called upon the name of Christ so far? It's talking about physical modern-day Israel and the ethnic Jews. First and foremost, it's really hard to miss. When you look at it, when you read the scripture, it's really hard to miss. That's like, well, that's the Old Testament. Everything I just said is in the New Testament. Well, it's a different Israel. Not according to the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is in the future from now. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to miss. It's an insult to the character of God. You know what I mean? It really is. And, that's why it just doesn't make any sense to me. He has to be talking about non-Christian ethnic Jews because he is an ethnic Jewish Christian and he's talking to somebody that is not. And he can't be talking to non-Christians because he calls them Christians. And they're not Jewish because he's talking about ethnic Jews. So he has to be the ethnic Jewish Christian, has to be talking to non-ethnic Jewish Christians about non-Christian ethnic Jews. That's just plain obvious to me. And he warns over and over and again not to boast against them. That's what he says. It makes perfect sense to me. God loves the Jews. Paul the Apostle, even he goes on to say, if the Jews rejected Jesus, then how much more amazing could it be that when they accept him, how much greater of a revival will that happen? That's why you don't reject them, because the ultimate end is for them to accept Christ. It's all right there, but honestly, Paul already explained all this because there was a spirit on the planet that hated non-Jewish Christians. There was a spirit of anti-Semitism that was going through the Christians against Jews. And Paul addressed it on purpose to stop that spirit from rising forever until Christ came back. And at this point in time, he was predicting this time in history. And the reason why the Holocaust happened in Nazi Germany is because there were a lot of Christians that fell into that same trap right there, right now. That they were not the Jews of the Bible. And that's what tolerated the spirit that killed millions of people. And so that's first and foremost, right? As a Christian, it's impossible not to support the Jews. Secondly, from a political perspective, Israel is the number one ally of the United States in the Middle East. Oh, well, no. Listen to me. Okay? Dummy. Listen to me. Palestine hates you. They despise the United States of America. They hate you. Palestine has never said, God bless America. Woo, yay, America. Yeah, woo. Yeah, they don't do that. Nowhere in human history has Palestine ever given you a reason to support them or that they're a greater friend to America than the Jewish people. Nowhere. It's never happened. No Muslim country in the Middle East likes America. Lebanon hates the United States. Jordan hates the United States. Saudi Arabia hates the United States. Iran hates the U.S. Iraq hates the U.S. Syria hates the U.S. All of these countries, every last one of them, hates the United States of America. Every single one of those countries burns American flags on videotape and chants death to America in their streets on a regular basis. They murder Christians. They behead Jews and Christians and Americans all the time on national TV. They live stream it on YouTube. Around the clock all the time. Muslims hate America and they hate Christians. They hate them. Why in your mind would you think that if every single country in the entire Middle East hates the United States of America, except one, that one country that doesn't hate America would be America's biggest threat? That's America's biggest problem. It's the country that doesn't hate the U.S. Forget about all the Muslims. Forget about the 1 billion Muslims on the earth that do terrorist attacks, escalating in level on a regular basis for the last 30 years. Forget about them beheading people and jihading and Allah Akbaring and molesting children and raping women and cutting people's hands off when they steal and taking women out in front of everybody and raping them and killing them because they tempted the man. Forget all of that for a minute. Okay, and that they have a book that expressly says that they have to take over the world and kill everybody that is an infidel and doesn't agree with Islam. And forget that they have an entire a verse in the Quran that says that Allah is the best of deceivers and that he deceives his enemies, and that they have a whole practice in Islam that says that they're allowed to lie about their belief systems and even deny being a Muslim if they're doing it to advance Islam. Forget all of that for a minute, and that they have a history of doing it, and that there was an Ottoman Empire and a Muslim Empire, and that they colonized the whole world, and that they went to war with Europe, and they got into a war and tried to take over Europe. Forget all of that for a minute. Oh, and by the way, they do terrorist attacks in Russia, too. They do them in China, too. And they do them in India, too. Which is why China has a whole bunch of Muslims in concentration camps. They do it all over the world. They go to war with everybody. They hate everyone. They don't just hate the U.S. They hate the whole world. Which is what the Bible said, right? Ishmael was a wild man. And he will raise, but many great nations will come out of him, and they have. And he will raise his arm to his hand to the whole world, and the whole world will raise its hand back to him. That's exactly what that means. Forget about all that, because the real problem is the Jews. The only democratic state that elects officials in the Middle East is the real problem in the Middle East. The only country that doesn't murder Christians is the real problem in the Middle East. You know, just think about it for a second. From a political standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. The only country in the Middle East that has an American embassy, that's our enemy. That's the one you got to get. You got to watch out for that. Don't worry about Iran tweeting on Twitter, we're going to nuke Israel off the face of the earth, and then we're going to blow up the United States. They're not the problem. It's Israel that you got to watch out for. They're the ones you got to watch. I mean, just imagine that for a minute. Just imagine how asinine that sounds. It sounds incredibly stupid. They're the problem. The people that believe in civil rights, they're the issue. The ones that don't, the ones that believe women have the right to drive. The ones that don't believe that women are 3/5 of a person, they're the problem. The ones that don't rape 13-year-old girls and then kill them for causing them to sin. They're the issue. That's them Jews. They're the ones that are responsible for America's problems. I mean, just politically think about that. The only government in the entire Middle East that gives us full-fledged ability to go through their government and their military protocols and operations and pass through seamlessly and help us achieve military objectives throughout the Middle East, they're the issue. Not Mum Dummy, who goes into Europe, who goes into New York and campaigns with a Arabic commercial. That's not the issue. The Jews are the problem. If he was Jewish and he had just taken over New York, that's when you would need to be scared. That's when you would need to be afraid. You need to worry about a Jewish mayor in New York City, not a Muslim one. It's the Jewish community you got to worry about, not Sharia law. You need to worry about, thank God, Mummy Dummy isn't a Jew, because then we would really be screwed. You know, that's what you sound like. That's how you sound. It sounds so asinine, it's almost hard to believe. It's so asinine. Think about this for a minute. It's so asinine that the asses are having a problem understanding. The party of the ass is having a hard time believing it. That's how stupid it is. It's so asinine that even the Democrats, Andrew Cuomo, says on national TV, man, if I was in New York City, I would be worried. If I was a Jew, I'd be worried if I was in New York right now. I think the Democrat Party's on a dangerous direction. I think they're headed up a cliff. They're in a very dangerous place. Andrew Cuomo says that. If I was in New York, I'd be really worried right now with Mummy Dummy. Eric Adams, the mayor that is being replaced, he says it. He goes everywhere and says, I don't really know about this Mummy Dummy Muslim guy. This is a very threatening thing to the people of New York City. The New York Post, which is a mainstream news media paper, they are not a right-wing paper. They say 30 reasons you don't want to vote for Mum Dummy. 30 reasons that Mum Dummy will destroy New York City, and you need to be wary of this. They say it. It's so blatantly obvious that the Muslims are a bigger problem to America than the Jews, that even the Democrats think that it's insane. Even the far left Democrats think it's insane. Even Barack Obama, who's a freaking Muslim, even he knows that it's so freaky that even though he's happy about Mum Dummy, he doesn't have the spine to endorse him in front of anyone and everyone because he's too scared that would put the nail in the coffin of his political career. He's too scared to touch Mummy Dummy with a 10-foot pole. That's how much of a threat Muslims are. Andrew Cuomo and the Democratic Party tried to campaign to the Jews in New York. I wouldn't vote for him if I was you. Going to kill every single one of them. That's how much more of a threat Muslims are than Jews. But the woke right wing wants me to believe that Israel's the problem. Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and MTG, they want me to believe that it's Israel that is always getting in the way. That's always getting us involved in things. They want me to believe that Israel works against the best interests of the United States. That is the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my entire life. You really want me to believe that Israel, one nation, little Israel, with that Jewish population there, you really want me to believe that they are behind 9/11 and ISIS putting a video on Twitter that says a message to the nation of the cross while beheading 15 people, slitting their throat? You want me to believe that people that have a saying in the Middle East, women are for the household, but children are for pleasure because they molest children? You want me to believe that the inbreded Ilham Omar and the Sharia law Muslims who hide women in burqas from head to toe and won't even show a piece of their hair, or they'll be shot in the streets with an AK-47, like Not Without My Daughter, Sally Field. You want me to believe that she was an excellent actress, by the way. You want me to believe that the Muslims in Iran that come here and then marry you and then take you back to their country and then just decide that you're not going to leave. And because you're an American, there's no embassy here, by the way, dummy. And because you're a woman, you don't have any rights, and now you're just kind of screwed. You want me to believe that those people that will not let Americans step foot in Tehran, Iran. There haven't been any Americans in Iran since like 1983. You want me to believe that the Saudi Arabian government, who actively worked to disannul the value of the US dollar, you want me to believe that all of those countries are not America's biggest problem? You want me to believe Mummy Dummy's not the problem. Bibi Netanyahu is. That's what you want me to believe. You really want me to believe that? I've never seen a Jew slit the throat of an American journalist. I've never seen it happen. I've never seen Jews kill Christians in front of everyone and then laugh about it on national TV and say, here's a message to the nation of the cross written in blood. I've never seen Jews do that. I've never seen a Jewish mayor put so much fear into people in the country that even the party of the ass thought that they were too far radicalized and left-leaning. I've never seen that. I've never seen Israel say that they were going to bomb the United States of America off the face of the earth with a nuclear weapon. I've never seen these things. I've never witnessed them. I've never seen them happen before my eyes. And you want me to believe that I should be more worried about the Jews than Mummy Dummy. So from a political perspective, it doesn't make any sense to be against the Jews. From an ideological perspective, it doesn't make any sense to be against the Jews. From a spiritual and religious perspective, it doesn't make any sense to be against the Jews. From a cultural perspective, it doesn't make any sense to be against the Jews. From a military and intelligence perspective, it doesn't make any sense to be against the Jews. I cannot find one reason to worry more about Bibi Netanyahu and the Jewish people and Israel than I do about mummy dummies and the 1.5 billion Muslims that want to actively take over the entire world and force them to accept Islam. That sounds like insanity to me. It sounds asinine. The Jews didn't bomb Paris. They didn't bomb 9/11. No Muslims did it. Okay? The Jews didn't create the Ottoman Empire and then try to invade Europe and try to kill the French and the English and everything else. Okay, no, that wasn't Jews. That was Muslims. So I don't know. It just sounds. I don't know. It just sounds asinine to me. It just doesn't make any sense. So I am absolutely pro-Israel. People come to me. Why are you talking about this? Why are you talking about that? You need to investigate Israel. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to line myself up to be like to be shot between the eyes. I'm not going to do that. And when I say that, and now you say that, and they'll try to clip that out and be like, see, he said that he's scared that Israel's going to assassinate him if he talks about them. He doesn't want to be shot between the eyes. No, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I mean, you bunch of crazy idiots. Trying to put words in people's mouths. Trying to make it sound like I would accuse Israel. You people are crazy, sick in the head. No, I mean, I'm not going to go against Israel because bless the Jews and you'll be blessed, curse Israel, you'll be cursed. I don't want to be taken out by the Almighty God. That's what I mean. And also be dumb enough to go against Israel and the Jews and then to become a friend of the Muslims and mummy dummy and then get your throat slit from behind you when no one's looking like that Ukrainian girl did on that train. No, that's not going to happen to me. So I'm not dumb enough to believe that the Jews are my enemy and that the Muslims are my friend. Listen to me. Listen to me, okay? You woke right people. Listen to me. The psyop isn't that Israel is really behind everything and they're trying to get you to go against the Muslims and they're stirring everything up and hate you and hate everything and trying to get you to hate each other. That's not the psyop. The psyop is the Muslims telling you the Jews are really the ones that did 9/11, are responsible for all the terrorist attacks, and you need to turn your back on them, and then maybe we won't hate you so much. You need to divide from them so that we can send Mum Dummy and the Muslim Brotherhood into the United States of America to take control of 80 U.S. elections and try to get our inbreded Ilham Omar and our pedophiliatic candidates involved to take Sharia law because the Muslim Brotherhood says in national TV, by bullet or by ballot. That's the psyop. And you people are falling for it. You're just dumb. It's like hook, line, and sinker. You're actually falling for this. You're actually falling for this idea, this psyop. I'm telling you right now, it is a psyop. And it's not a psyop from Mossad. It's a psyop from Saudi Arabia. It's a psyop from Iran. It's a psyop from the Middle East. The Muslims, I'm telling you right now, bro, how stupid you gotta be. The Muslims are running a divide and conquer on you right now. How do you not see that? You see Mummy Dummy come in here and try to steal your city that they bombed. They killed 2,000 Americans. And then they tried to build a mosque on ground zero. You remember that? And said, hell no. No chance in hell. Quite literally. Are you going to be building a mosque on the ground zero? It's not gonna happen. And then they wait about 10 years, and then they grab Mummy Dummy, the biggest clown in the history of American politics, and then they want him to be the mayor of New York City. And what they're doing, a psyop on the United States of America, divide and conquer, is this is how Muslims think. We hate the Jews and we want Israel. They're right here. but we can't seem to take them. And they got this big boy brother by the name of the United States of America that always seems to get involved every time we do this. So here's what we'll do. We'll blow them both up. And then they do 9/11 and terrorist attacks and go after the Jews. And then for a while they realize that that doesn't work. Because you're dealing with the two most advanced militaries on the face of the planet. And they say, well, we got to be a little bit smarter about this, a little bit more strategic. So let's run a divide and conquer plan. We have to divide America from Israel so that we can take out Israel because America's not there anymore, and we can take out America too. And the way that we do that is we have to run a psyop on the American people that says the Jews are your problem. The Jews are your enemy. You hate the Jews. And then you'll look for a friend because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And then maybe that friend is the Muslims. And then maybe you'll elect a Muslim mayor by the name of Mummy Dummy. And then you'll stand hand in hand with the Muslims as they try to kill the Jews, and then they turn that throat right around when you're not looking and take a knife out and slit your throat right in the middle of the streets too. That's what it is. They're running a psyop on Americans that the Jews are your problem so that they can take out the Jews. And you know what the Muslims think? The Muslims think that Americans are the stupidest people on the face of the planet. They hate everyone, but they think that Americans are especially the stupidest people on the face of the planet. They hate the Chinese, but they're like, but the Chinese, they put us in internment camps and they won't let us do that crap around there. And they hate India. But they say, but the Indians will go to war with Pakistan. And they despise the Jews more than anybody on the face of the planet. But they think, but the Jew ain't never going to let me do what I want to do. That Jew doesn't care. He'll get right up in my face and slap me across the mouth and say, let's go at it, and he'll fight me to the death in the streets because he don't care. We're like sworn enemies to the end. Yeah? That's what the Muslim thinks about the Jews. But what they think about Americans are so stupid. Americans will literally let me walk right into their country and elect myself as a mayor in their city. They're so dumb. I can convince Americans to let me tell them how they should run their foreign policy with the Jews, my sworn enemy. They're so stupid. I mean, at least the Jews, we hate them, but they're not. They'll slap us across the mouth if we try to come in sneakily. They'll never hire a Muslim to be in charge in Israel. But the Americans, they're a bunch of dummies. That's why we can send our own dummy. We can send Mummy Dummy to trick the dummy Americans. That's what they think. They're all laughing about it. I have videos. You've seen the videos? I have videos of the Muslim Brotherhood sitting there saying, by bullet or ballot, joking and laughing through their teeth. We have over 800 people that are going to run for political office in the United States of America in the next decade. It will probably have over 86 different Congress members that are all of Muslim descent. And you see this foolish Muslim teacher at a college. I used to say that we should just use a bullet and go around and kill everybody. But now I say, you know what? Maybe we could use a ballot and just take it over by the voting metrics. Bunch of jihads. And And then you see oh my goodness. Oh, Lord Jesus. They're so stupid. God in heaven help them. Oh, Lord Jesus. Help us all, Yahweh. A bunch of dummies is what they are. And then I'll go in and I'll introduce Sharia law because I've already done it 100 million times. That's how I took over Lebanon. That's how I took over all these countries. That's how I took over Iran. I've already done this 100 million times. It's the way I do things. It's a whole blueprint in my book called the Quran, where Muhammad used to do this all the time too. In fact, the word mummy dummy actually means follower of Muhammad. That's what that name means. You people are fools. And then, while I do all this, I destroy them all because they're all a bunch of mummy dummies. I go in here and I change the laws and oh God, but it's not really oh God, it's yes, Jesus, let me show them and tell them how it's true. it's not no oh God. It's a yes, Jesus, let me tell them how it's true. It's a let me show you how dumb and stupid that they are. Then I'll go inside and I'll indoctrinate all their children. Do you know who Bridget Gabriel is? If you don't, you need to go find out who she is. Bridget Gabriel is she got beautiful eyes too. You ever seen her eyes? Her eyes are so pretty. Gorgeous eyes, beautiful eyes. She is one of the most beautiful, and I mean spiritually and, like figuratively, metaphorically, but also has beautiful eyes too. She's one of the most beautiful citizens in the United States of America right now. It is a privilege that the United States of America gets to host such a wonderful woman in the United States. You thank God for women like Bridget Gabriel, who are not from America originally and don't really owe this country anything, but decided to come here to warn us about how the Muslims would try to infiltrate the United States of America. Because of gratitude to America and the Jews in Israel for delivering her and her family from Muslim occupation when the Muslims took over Lebanon when she was a young girl. And it says, I'm going to go to America and I'm going to tell them how I see the exact same thing happening to the United States that I did to Lebanon when I was a little girl. Which is that the Muslims are never a problem when they're the minority. But when they become the majority, they become evil. They become totally different overnight. And that's just the truth. That's how the Nazis were. That's how the Nazis were. You go and read that very famous Jewish book from the. You go and read the. You go and read that very, very famous Jewish book from. What's the name of that guy? That. No. You go and read that very famous. Jewish book from that Holocaust survivor. What's his name? It's super famous. It's like one of the most, if not the most famous Holocaust story books ever. He was on Oprah, all sorts of stuff. What is the name of that book? We read it in school. It's not The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, even though that's a big one too, but it's another one. It's a different one. But it's the true life story of how they wound up getting put in the concentration camps and everything. Holocaust survivor. You go and listen to that book, and he tells you right in there exactly how the Nazis took over the Jews. He tells you how it went down. And he explains that the Nazis were the nicest, most beautiful people in the world when they first came to their houses and their homes. They brought chocolates and they brought flowers and they were kind to the wives of the home and the mothers. They were the nicest people in the world to the Jews. They were ravaging wolves in sheep's clothes, is what they were. And they were so nice. They were the most nicest people. They would sit down and they would eat dinner with them and they'd smile and they'd play with their kids and they'd do everything. And they did this for weeks, days, and months on end. As they slowly brought more Nazis in and slowly took over more land and slowly took more political power in the region. And then when they were finally in a position of political power, they started to become very nasty, very mean individuals, very disgusting individuals. And then not only was they just getting rid of the chocolates and the flowers, but then they started getting an ass attitude. And I mean that quite literally. A donkey attitude. Like the demonic rats. And they became very nasty people. And then slowly but surely, they just started to, they got worse and worse and worse. And it started off as like, well, I'm just going to know you're not going to do anything. You understand what I'm saying? Like they would try to fight. Well, I'm just, no. Well, no. No. He said, but no. No, you're not going to do that to me. We're going to put you in your place. That's what you should be saying to the Muslims. What the Jews should have been saying to the Nazis. But they didn't know what they were like. Because they had never met this kind of evil before. And they kept telling themselves, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe they're misunderstood. Maybe they're not really what we say that they are. And they're just not really that thing. And that we've hyper sensualized all these stories about them. And it wasn't until then they start being passive aggressive. And then the next thing you know, they're like pushing their moms down and all sorts of stuff. And they're moving them in ghettos. And then they're out there in the middle of the streets. And he said, I remember being right there out in the middle of the street and waiting for the train cart to come take us away to Auschwitz. And we were still sitting there thinking that it could get better. Eventually something good's going to happen and everything will get better. And he said it wasn't until we were in the train carts going towards the internment camps that we realized that we were in danger and that we were in trouble and that it wasn't going to get better. I said, how is it possible that you didn't realize this until this point in time? How is it possible that you didn't know that up until that point? And he explained, because we held on to this false hope, this false reality that things would naturally get better. And because of that, we were inactive and we didn't do anything to actively push it into going the right direction. And that's where the United States of America is right now. They keep trying to assume it'll get better. And then Mummy Dummy takes over New York City. But that's all the way over there on the other side of the country. Didn't you read the book, my friend? I heard some idiot when I was in a sports bar the other day. And he was talking about, who cares about who the mayor of New York City is? That's all the way over there. What does that got to do with us? And if you talk to most of the people in New York, they don't even care about it. He sounds like a fool when he talks that way. And let me go ahead and tell you a secret, my little dumb friend. The fact that you even think that way, and that fearfully and sadly enough, that there's thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people maybe, probably in this country that think that way too, is already the proof that you've been subverted by the Muslim Brotherhood, my friend. The fact that you would even imagine that inside of your mind is proof that the Muslim Brotherhood has already tricked you. You've already fallen for their foolish antics. You have already been subverted by them. Their plan is working. Because that's exactly what they would want you to think. It's the most asinine statement I ever heard in my life. It's like it's really insane, really. It's like seeing a con artist tell you before they walk up to somebody, this is how I'm going to kill them. And then they proceed to, and they'll say, and they're actually going to give it to me. I'm going to walk up to them, and I'm actually going to cause them to give to me the knife in their hands, and that's the knife that I'll use to kill them. Watch me do it. And then you say, there's no way. And you go up to that person, you say, I'm telling you, this guy is, you're almost not worried at first because you think no one's that dumb, no one's that stupid. This guy's a con artist and a charlatan. He won't be able to touch you. Listen, he actually thinks so dumb of you that he thinks that you're going to give him that knife and then he's going to use it to slit your throat. And they look at you and say, no way, no one would ever do that. And then you proceed to watch him walk up to the person and have a full-fledged conversation with him and become his friend for 5 minutes. And then they start hanging out and they start drinking together, and you're thinking to yourself, there ain't no way that this guy is that dumb enough to not see this happen. This guy's that stupid. And then next thing you know, he pulls the knife out of his hand, and you think to yourself, this guy's really going to die because he's that stupid. This guy really told me that he would do it. And the fact that he looks at me and says, well, it's not a big deal that he's planning on holding a knife, because why does it even matter anyways? Is the proof that that fool has already been subverted by the con artists. And that's what it is right now in the United States of America. When he said that, I was like, you are such a fool. And I honestly feel sorry for you. I honestly pity you. Because I pity anyone in this country, anyone in this nation, anyone in this world that feels that way is a fool to me. I pity these people because I cannot, it's almost mind-boggling that someone is that out of touch with reality. And that's what it is. And you're like, man, all that brainwashing and all of that nonsense, all of that psychological operation of Islam, all of that stuff is real, and it works very well. PsyOps work for a reason, interestingly enough, but they do. And You're either dumb and you're stupid or you're not. You're either the one that's being psyoped or you're aware enough to see everyone else being psyoped. You're either the psyoper, the psyopt, or you're aware to the fact that it's all happening and you got to do your own reverse psyop to try and prevent it from happening, yeah? So you're either the Central Intelligence Agency or you're the intelligence agencies that are trying to destroy it, or you're the clown that's stuck in the middle that everyone's going to war over. And those people are fools. And they say this. And I'm like, you never read the book about the Holocaust survivor, did you? You never taught the book in school like you should have been. You never read about how he said those exact words, actually. The Nazis are all the way over there. They're on the other side of the country. What harm can they do to us? That's his exact words. That's what he said. And now here you are saying the same thing. The Muslims are all the way in New York City. What could they do to us? It's foolish. It's the most asinine thing you could ever see in your life, honestly. Because they didn't always used to be in New York City. There was a time where they're all the way in the Middle East. What could they do to us? And now they're all the way in New York City. What could they do to us? And if you continue that, they're in the state over. What could they do to us? And then they're in the next county. What could they do to us? And then they're in the next city. What could they do to us? And they're only 49% of the population. We're the majority. What could they do to us? That is just asinine foolishness, my friend. And really, it's the saddest thing I've ever seen. It's like watching a deer march off to its death because it's too stupid to know which direction to run. It's like watching a lamb go to the slaughter. Yeah, that's what it really is. You're like, these people are fools. They're about to be wiped out like there's nobody's business, like there's no tomorrow, man. And it's because of their ignorance and they refuse to listen. Those kind of people look at people like me, yeah, and they think that we're fools. They think that we're the idiots that just don't get it. They think that we're the damned idiots that just don't get it. And when I say damned, I mean quite literally damned, like damnation, like hell. They think that we're the fools, we're the damned fools that just don't get it. We're the ones that are going to wind up experiencing hell because we just don't get it. Hell on earth and after. We just too stupid. We don't understand. My friend, we are the only hope that you have on the face of the planet. If it wasn't for us, if it wasn't for people like me and other smart people with a brain, if it wasn't for us in the United States of America, this country would have no chance. This country would have no shot. It's only because of people like us that there's a fighting chance left for the future of the United States of America, yeah? Because we have to ignore all the NPCs and the people that sit there and talk about LeBron James all day. The world is up in flames and we just talk about LeBron James. We have to ignore the people that talk about LeBron James and sports all day, and movies and circuses and clown shows and restaurants and every other stupid thing under the sun. And don't get me wrong about that. I love sports more than anybody. Right? They'll be, you know what I mean? Yeah, I love sports more than anybody. I'm a sports enthusiast. Football is my favorite sport in the world. I love football. And I'm a beast at it too. And I love basketball as well. I'm a beast at that as well. I would destroy anybody on a court. I love football and basketball more than anything. And I love many other sports too. And I love movies. And I'm a creative writer and I love to act. I love all sorts of things. But I'm not a fool. And that is the difference, my friend. That's the difference. Because I know it's because of my love for football and basketball and the creative arts and music and culture and the American way of life. It's because of my love for these things that I'm smart enough to know that those things only exist because you're not dumb enough to be taken over by the enemy of that society. Yeah. If it wasn't for going to war with that, you wouldn't have those things. And you're a fool if you believe anything else under the sun. So that's what it is. It's like saying, good example here, I'll give you an example. Imagine if someone sat around playing video games at home all day long, and all they ever cared about and talked about was video games. That's all they ever talked about. And every time you tried to have a conversation with them, it was always about video games. And then you said, did you notice that there wasn't enough money to pay the electric bill this month? And they said, who cares about those problems? I gotta play my video games. And then you said, well, do you know that if you don't take care of those problems, no, get out of my face. I gotta play this game real quick. And then you said, did you know that there's a fire happening on the other side of the house? And if we don't do something about it, that we're all gonna die inside of it? Oh, no, hold on a minute. I'm playing my video games. Did you know that I did? Did you know that I did this last night? Did you know that I just got a triple kill on Call of Duty? Yeah, but and then and then they think that we're idiots. They think that we're idiots because it's like, no, honey, yeah, you're a fool. It's because of my love for Call of Duty, which I have a huge love and not destroy anybody 1v1. It's because of my love for Call of Duty and getting 25-minute kill road nukes on a regular basis. It's for that love of Call of Duty and my love of video games that I take care of the electric bill and stop the house from burning down, because I love them so much that I know that if I don't take care of those things, I'll never be able to enjoy them again. And that's what it is with sports and music and art and acting and everything else. It's like, what do you think that we're fighting for? What do you think that we're concerned for in the first place? You sound like an asinine fool. And it is that serious, and it is that dumb, and it is that stupid. And you may not realize it, but that's how dumb it is. You may not realize that that's how the outside world sees you when you say things like, who cares about that? That's happening all the way over there. The entire world looks at you and thinks, that is a fool. Anyone who is an adult, anybody who's grown up to the world and knows without the electric bill, there's no video games, thinks to themselves, only a fool would say, who cares about who the mayor of New York City is? That's all the way over there on the other side of the country. That's how you sound, and it's a terrible thing, except it's way worse than that. Who cares about video games? I mean, that's just this tiny little thing. It's about not seeing these people murdered. I mean, imagine watching somebody. It's the Roman Empire, is what it is. It's like, you don't study history, man. You look like a Roman. You talk that way, you sound like a Roman. I mean, I'm sitting there inside of this sports bar. Of course, that's where he would be, right? Told you I love sports. He does too. Of course, we're both in the sports bar watching sports. And he tries to get into this political conversation with some guy, and he talks about, I don't understand why anybody would be worried about the Muslims in New York. And you're like, have you ever paid attention to a history class a day in your life? And it's a real genuine concern, my friend. It is not an insult. And we're not trying to insult them. We're trying to save their life. We're Captain Von Trapp in the middle of Nazi Germany. The world's up in flames. And they just want to talk about what happened last week. And you're like, because you see what's coming, right? You know what's coming. And you're like, have you ever read a history book before? Do you know what happened in Rome? Well, the Roman Empire failed. Well, I mean, that's a real generic way to put it. In real world actuality, what actually happened is, do you know how they failed? Do you know why they failed? And people say, well, yeah, I mean, I know it's because they were just paying attention to blah, 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 blah. No. Let me tell you exactly how they fell in real actual terms. What happened the day that Rome fell? The day that Rome fell, there was a Colosseum game playing that very day when Rome fell. That Colosseum was packed out to the punch, filled with citizens who were watching the games take place that exact day. They were so enthralled with the game of the Colosseum that they had no idea that the barbarians had fought their way all the way to the Roman city, and that the entire empire in Rome had already fallen. They had no idea. They were sitting there in the Colosseum watching this game, and these barbarians invade the capital city, Rome, and they set the Colosseum on fire while the people are in it watching the games. The entire Colosseum is being engulfed by flames, and the people, half of them are burning to death, and the other half are still watching the game. And then they all turn around, they smell smoke, they start to freak out, they start to, what is going on? And then they realize that they're all being massacred. And they had no idea that the barbarians had set the Colosseum on fire. They had no idea the barbarians were by the Colosseum. They had no idea that they were in the city of Rome, because they had no idea that the entire city had not just the city, but the entire empire had already fallen miles away in other countries until that very moment. And then they were all dead. And that's how Rome fell. That was Rome's final hour. And that's what you remind me of when we're in a sports bar and grill and you're talking about the world's up in flames and we're just talking about LeBron James. That's how it feels when you look at me and say, who cares about Mummy Dummy becoming the mayor of New York? That's all the way in New York City. I think to myself, this guy will be sitting in this sports bar while the Muslims are burning down the next 20 states next to him from New York to this one. And then they'll be burning this sports bar down to the ground and he'll be inside watching TV. Like a fool. That's what he is. He's a fool. It's a very horrible thing to see. Yeah, watch. Yeah. But it's not that horrible because we're going to put an end to it. Because we have to. Now, they won't help us, and that's fine. Let's go. It's okay. We don't need their help. But, the fact, it's just crazy to watch because when you know of the psychological operations and you know what the Muslim Brotherhood has planned and what they think and what they want to do and all of that, when you are aware of how they designed all of these things and you know about the bullet or ballot mantra, you know this stuff. You study these people. You hear them talk. You know what they are, who they are, and what they do. You know their playbook inside and out like the back of your hand. You know their blueprint. And then you go into your random local sports bar and you hear an asinine fool talk about the fact that it doesn't matter who the mayor of New York City is. And you say to yourself, oh my goodness gracious. The Muslim Brotherhood is actually psyoping this guy. This guy has genuinely been psyoped by the Muslim Brotherhood. And he doesn't even know it. And people would say, Josh, he doesn't know that. So that doesn't, okay, listen to me, other psyoped individual. The fact that he doesn't know that is the proof that he's been psyoped. A psychological operation is only a psychological operation if the victim has not the slightest clue that he's thinking the exact way that his enemy wants him to think. Psychological operations are intended to be an operation that works on the psychological, the psyche, the thinking of an enemy, of a victim, to subliminally make them think a certain type of thing and a certain type of way. That is the definition of a psychological operation. When somebody says what he just said, and you know the Muslim Brotherhood says our psychological operation is to get them to think that Muslims are harmless. And then you hear them saying Muslims are harmless. And they're blatantly unaware that there is an enemy inside of a command bunker somewhere inside of a cave or wherever they may be doesn't really make sense, doesn't matter to me. It's a command bunker nonetheless. And they're all talking to each other about how to do a psychological operation on their enemy and convince everybody to think that they're not as bad as they actually are. When you know that, and then you see these people say that, they're unaware that there's actually a group of people that sit around for hours plotting and discussing the downfall of their entire family, country, and human civilization. Because they're just that ignorant to the world. When you see that, that is very concerning. That means that the psychological operation is already working. The fact that you don't know that shows that you have been subverted. The question is, how did that happen? Who was the gatekeepers in charge of the United States of America that was supposed to stop you from becoming subverted that didn't do their job, and now for whatever reason that is, you are now subverted? Now that's the real question, right? But that's where we are. You didn't read the Holocaust Survivor book? You didn't read that book? You know, the whole reason why he wrote that book, and he tells you this, he tells you why he wrote it, is because he was trying to warn people about the way that Nazis and Nazi Germany comes to power. That's the whole reason for the book in the first place. It was meant to be, it's a blueprint that shows you the tactics and strategies of tyrants and how they psyop coerce individuals into following their metrical plan. Two, so that when you see those same things happen in front of your face by a snake, that you won't fall victim to it. And you didn't read the book. Because if you did, you would know that the only time Nazi Germany ever takes over is when you're worried about the fact that it's on the other side of the world. It's on the other side of the planet. It's on the other side of the country. It's on the other side of the state. It's on the other side of the city. It doesn't matter to me. It's not going to affect me. That's someone that's been psyoped. That's someone that's been psyoped. Look, man, I could throw a football 70 yards if I really wanted to, and I hit three-pointers all day like it's nobody's business. But the fact that I would literally think to myself that I shouldn't worry about Mummy Dummy being the mayor of NYC is just asinine to me. I would be a fool. And that's what that guy reminds me of, because he's over there talking about, they're talking about like, well, let's throw a football so many yards. I'm like, bro, I could throw a football farther than you. Most likely, definitely. Let's go play football right now. I love football. It's my favorite sport in the world. Let's go do it. But guess what else? I also know that the Muslim in New York is the biggest problem in the world, and why are we talking about how far we could throw a football and not talking about the fact that a Muslim just infiltrated the biggest city in the United States of America and the entire trade route for the North American continent? Now that's dumb. And I can't settle down. Well, settle down, Josh. I can't settle down. You know why I can't settle down? Because I know the real world stakes that are at hand right now, and I can't and I will not ignore them. I don't understand how people can settle down. I don't understand it. Because I'm Captain Von Trapp in Nazi Germany. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how you couldn't talk about it. That makes no sense to me. I don't know what that world is. I don't have no turn off mode. I don't have no, well, because I really know the real world stakes, the real world problems that are at hand. I know the real world consequences and stakes that are in front of your table, in front of my table. You know what I mean? I know that. To me, that's not a separate world somewhere else, and then I have my world here. That's not how my world works. That's not how my mind works. I don't have two different planets going on. It's all happening in one. So, and if anything, hearing so many people that have that kind of take on things, all that does is push me more towards, if they're not going to do it, then someone like me has to do it, because they're going to get everybody killed if they don't do it. That's what that pushes me towards. That's just where I am. That's just where I'm at. And I don't even try to explain it no more. Like, I used to try to explain to people, and they're like, why do you talk about politics so much? And I used to try to explain to people why I talk about politics so much. I really used to try super hard to get people to understand why this is important, why we need to talk about it, why I talk about it, why I think about it all the time. And then the more that time goes on and the more atrocities you see, the more sick things you see, the more horrible, repulsive things that you see, the more you realize to yourself, if you haven't woken up by now, what can I do to help you? If you don't see what's going on now, there's no way that I will be able to help you wake up. That's your responsibility. It's like being on the Titanic. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm on the Titanic and you're on the Titanic too, and we're all on the Titanic. But the problem is that some of us understand that the boat is sinking and others of us don't. Some of us are running to find a lifeboat. Some of us are already at the top where the lifeboats are, and we're getting off of this ship. Some of us are just starting to realize that not everybody's inside the ballroom, so something else must be going on. And some of us are just sitting around playing card games all day, talking about LeBron James while the world is up in flames. And that's where we're at right now. And we all got different variations to play. And some of us are down in the basement, and some of us are on the first floor, and some of us are on top. We're all in different places. And you have your polar extremes. Someone's already gotten off the boat, and somebody is asleep and doesn't even know the thing is sinking. And that's where we are. In the United States of America, in the world as a whole, that's where we are. Now, I'm on the Titanic, but I'm not a dummy. So I got my family, and I take my family with me, and I protect them at all costs. But they're smart like me. They're not a bunch of dummies. So I don't really have to worry about them, because I know that they already know that the thing's burning down, and they're not going to sit there and wait for it to come down and burn their floor down. This is not going to happen. So I got me and my family and my friends, who are trying to help as well, but they're a little bit smarter than the average bear, And then you start thinking to yourself, I ran around the boat for 1,000,000 times trying to scream at everybody with a megaphone, telling them that they're all about to die if they don't do something, and they don't do it now. But now we're to the point where this thing is sinking, and now, the warnings have gone off too much and long enough, and now it's time that instead of just sitting there screaming at them with the megaphone the whole time to wake up, Now it's time to put the megaphone down and we start walking around gathering our things and what we do, and we're about to get off of this shit. That's where we're at. And when I say get off this ship, of course, I don't mean that in a, it's a good example, but it's sort of polar bad example, but it's, it's not really a bad example, but I don't mean in the sense of a negativity like abandon the United States of America or abandon the cause or just give up. That's not what I mean. I mean the polar opposite of that. I mean get involved in what's happening now to do something about it before the destruction comes. Does that make sense? I'm gathering around to gather as many people in his lifeboat as possible because we're going to save everybody that we can save. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. We're going to save the United States of America. But, sadly, there's going to be casualties because people are dumb and stupid and they don't know how to listen. And that's really what it is. And when you look at New York City, you're like, that's a group of dummies right there. And I have a lot of family from New York. Obviously. I have my whole family's from New York City, but they're not stupid. They're not dumb. You think one of them thinks Mummy Dummy is a good idea? Oh, yeah, right. I'll make jokes all day about how stupid Mummy Dummy is. Mummy Dummy's a fool. But what it is, though, is that, I said, who even voted for this guy? And, you got some asinine idiots that come in the comment section and say, don't you understand that he won the vote by like 52%? So it's the people of New York. And I'm like, no, you're no ass. Literally, because they're a Democrat. No party of the ass. I don't think that you looked at the voting metrics. The people that were born and raised in New York, he lost the majority of those voters. They did not vote for him. He lost the majority of them. And I said that to them, and they looked at me like I was stupid. They looked at me like, well, really, like they were stupid. Like they were a deer in headlights that didn't have a brain inside of their skull. And I said, you go look at the voting metrics. Mum Dummy, and I could see that you guys have that in common. Mum Dummy lost the majority of voters that were born and raised in New York City. Those are the actual election statistics. He also lost the majority of the vote of people that have lived in New York City over 10 years. So he lost the majority of people that have been born and raised there, lost the majority of people that have lived there for over a decade. Now, where he won the majority of votes was in people that have been in New York for 5 or less years. He won that group of people by 93%. 93% or more, at least 93 people that had lived there for less than 5 years voted for the dummy. And then he won 72% of the people who had lived there for less than 10 years. That's where he won. So that means all the Americans that were born and raised in New York, they didn't vote for Mum Dummy. All the Americans that came to New York 10 years ago, around 2015, before 2015, they didn't vote for Mummy Dummy. But well over 90% of all the people that got there 5 years ago, 2020, so all the illegal immigrants that came to New York City, they voted for the dummy. They voted for Mummy Dummy. And then all the people that have been there for less than 10 years, meaning have been there since Donald Trump first became president. So everyone that moved to a blue city and state because Donald Trump was president. Those are the people that voted for Dummy. So not New Yorkers, illegal immigrants. That's how he became the mayor of New York City. And that's what I meant when I said that. And I tried to explain that to them that, they're not very smart. So they skip over all the actual real world election statistics and then they make up numbers off the top of their head because they're, a bunch of corny goofballs, yeah. That don't really know anything about anything, so they just kind of make up stuff on the fly. And, that's what it is. That's what it is. Just stupid people, just stupid asses. And really, that's what they are. Like they're demonic rats, they're democrats, they're dummycrats. They're the party of the ass. That's what it is. And then they tell me these stupid things. But then when I meet these people, I say, what does it matter who the mayor of New York City is? That's all the way over there. I said, yeah. You're not very bright, are you? You're just not very smart. Like, that's what I think to myself. You're just not very smart. And you've been infiltrated, you've been subverted, you have been brainwashed by the Muslim Brotherhood. You are psyoped. And what I see when I look over New York City is I see a bunch of sheep that are in for the biggest shellacking of their entire life, and they have no idea what's coming. And it's horrible to watch. It's like sick. It's about to be a Holocaust there. It's like to be a massive genocidal murder spree. It's going to be a bloodbath in the city of New York. You just see people running back and forth, and they have no idea. They have no idea. And they think that we're the stupid ones. They think that we're the dumb ones. And we're trying to help them. We're trying to save these people lives. And they look at us like we're the dumb ones. And unfortunately, that's a product of America being subverted for years and years and years and decades and decades and decades. That's what that is. When you have a group of people here that are so subverted, they're so stupid. And I hate to use those words. I hate to use that words, but they're so dumb. It's so true. When I talk to people from other countries, they say some really crazy things about Americans. They say some really crazy things. I was down in Miami, and I was talking to a couple of girls from Brazil, and one of them was from Rio, and the other one was from Sao Paulo. And we were talking, and then they were talking to me, and I said, "Oh, you're from Rio, and you're from Sao Paulo," and then one of them looks at me, and they're really serious. They're being dead serious. They're not even being insulting or anything like that. And people don't believe that. They don't think that. When I tell people this story, they don't believe me and they don't think it. They think that these people were being rude, but they really were not being rude. It just shows you how unself-aware that a lot of people are in this country, that they really honestly thought that these people were being rude. Yeah. They were not being rude. They were being honest. They looked at me and they said, she looked at me and she kind of got this look on her face and she was like, yeah, that's not, they're not in the same city. And I was like, oh, and she wasn't being rude. She was just like saying it matter of factly. And I was like, well, yeah, oh yeah, I know that. Rio's over here and Sao Paulo's over here. Yeah. And she's like, and and what did she say? She said something like, and well, that's near that's in South America. And I was like, yeah, that's in South America. And she was like, well, she's like, and she said a few other things. And I was like, what? I mean, these are like obvious things that you're saying right here. Like, these are like normal, matter of fact things. And she was like, well, the problem is like Americans don't know their geography. That's what she said. And she's being dead serious. She's being dead serious. And she was not being insulting. It wasn't even like a, ha ha ha, you stupid dummy. It wasn't even like that. And I couldn't be insulted by it anyways because I guess I'm too smart for that. I mean, I don't know. I know more about geography than like almost anybody on the planet. So I can't really take personal offense to it. And I was like, that's not true. Americans know their geography. And she was like, and this is what she said. She's being totally honest with me. She wasn't even being insulting, And she was like, well, I thought that they did. I thought that, but then I came here and I met a bunch of Americans and they didn't even know what continent they were on. They didn't even know that this was North America. And I was like, well, in my head, I'm like, well, I know that's true because I meet people from here all the time that don't know that this is North America. In my head, I've met so many people that have no idea the difference between North America and the United States. They have no idea the difference between cities and states. They have no idea. They're stupid. So when she said that to me, I wasn't like, oh, there's no way that's true. No, in my head, I was thinking, yeah, there's a lot of dummies out there, isn't there? And then she's saying all these things, and I'm like, no. And I told her, no, that's not true. Americans know their geography. And then she's like, oh, no, they didn't even know what continent. And I said, no. Her, your friend, your homie, whoever she is from North America, she didn't know what continent that she was on. That's not true of Americans as a whole. That's true of whoever your dumb friend is. And she's like, they're looking at me and they're like, but I've met more than one person. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no. Here's the thing. And this is why they're saying it, right? Because even the dumb people in Brazil know what continent that they're on. Because you don't have to be smart to know what continent you're on. You learn that when you're like, 5, 6 years old? At least, right? So it's not that they're like, oh, well, all Americans are dumb. It's that's not the vibe that it was. It was a surreal vibe. You see what I'm saying? They weren't being insulting. And, I try to tell people that don't talk to these people from other countries and they get insulted. Oh, here they're just trying to call us all stupid. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. They genuinely were surprised and in actual shock that these people did not know what continent that they were on. It wasn't an insult. It was surreal shock. Because they're saying this in real time. Like, they're not trying to buy into stereotypes or anything. They're just saying, well, I thought that, but, because they just, this was their first time in America. They'd only been here for like a short amount of time. And I talked to these Americans and I realized that they don't know what continent that. And I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before. In Brazil, that's not a thing. No, that's not a thing. And I'm like, I know what you mean because I thought that too, because where I come from and, my family, that's not a thing either. I've never heard of that. But they didn't know what continent that they were on. And I see that all the time. So it wasn't, I know she wasn't lying. Like, that's true. This happens all the time. I see this all the time. And these people are in college, by the way, because this girl she's talking about was in college and didn't know what concept they were. And we know that, right? They make this whole thing about it called the dumbing down of America, where they go on college campuses and say, "What's the War of 1812?" And they sit there, 1956? No, no. See, the War of 1812 is the War of 1812 because it was in 1812. And then they say, who's the first president of the United States? I think it starts with a George, doesn't it? George. No, it's not Bush's. It's not. No, it's not Bush. No, it's definitely not George Bush. Just these stupid things. Because this is what our education system has become. It's become the most disgraceful education system on the face of the planet. And I'm talking to this two beautiful girls, one from Sao Paulo, one from Rio de Janeiro. And I was like, no. You listen to me. I know my geography, okay? I know more about geography than both of you combined. And I will go into a geography battle with any of you at any point in time. I will tell you where every single state in America is. I'll tell you where every single country in North and South America are. I'll show you every country in Europe. I'll tell you all the countries in Africa. I can place any country in the world. And then they looked at me, and they were not being insulting, they're not being mean. They looked at me and they said, well, yeah, that's you, Josh. You can do that. But you're the exception to the rule. You're not the rule of thumb. So they were saying, we're not saying that all Americans are dumb and they don't know what they're talking about. What we're saying is that where it's supposed to be the rule of thumb is that everybody knows their geography, but the exception is that there's dumb people. Here it seems to be flipped, where the rule of thumb is that people don't know and there's just some people that do. Isn't that interesting? And I was like, no, I know that's true because it shouldn't be, but I've met many people like that. And I'm talking to them and I'm saying, the thing is, no, I'm like, you don't understand because they're young, I mean, I'm young. We're like all the same age, but I say young, but they're only like a couple years younger than me. But I'm just so used to people being sort of, you feel like people are so maybe not emotionally mature enough, and then you start calling people young, and it's kind of weird, really, right? But I'm like, no, let me explain something to you, okay? And you're so used to this generation not having common sense. And you're like, look, because you're from Sao Paulo, let me help you understand something about the United States of America. Because they're literally dumbfounded. They're thinking to themselves because they're like, well, America's the greatest country in the world, isn't it? America is the first world country. They're the richest, most powerful, most political persuasive, most militarily impactful country in the entire world. They're a freaking empire. How could their people, they must have some really bright people over there, right? They must have some smarties. I mean, you don't get to that level of power without having some smart people in your side, right? So how is it that when we got here, none of them even knew what continent that they were on? And so, well, it's kind of like this. Let me explain that to you. Once upon a time, the United States of America had the number one education system in the entire world. And then they're looking at me like, well, no. See, now here's where you're the dummy, okay? See, because you're from Sao Paulo, you're from Rio. Here's where you're the dummy, okay? So now let me help you educate you Brazilians about some American history. America, World War II America, pre-Vietnam War America had the number one education system in the entire world by every single rank of metric that there is. We were ranked number one in everything, from grades to test-taking skills to graduation rates to jobs after graduation. We were ranked number one literally in every single subject independently in every single area. Not just number one overall as a whole, number one in each subject separately, independently as an area. Number one in math, number one in science, number one in history. We're number one in every subject. And that's when America became America, the empire. Then what happened was, like Rome, they became so ahead of everybody and so far first world country and so far advanced that they started to think, well, I don't even really have to try anymore. I don't really have to try and compete with the world on math and science because I don't have to go to the rest of the world to get opportunities. I don't have to interact with Asia and I don't have to interact with South America because I'm smarter than them. Because they have to come here to get an education from me and they have to come here to get a job from me. They have to come learn English to be able to do business with me because I'm the one that has all the money and all the opportunity and all the power. That's what America as a whole, started to believe. Not all Americans, very smart Americans like myself, we knew you always got to be smarter than the enemy, right? That's how Donald Trump thinks. You always got to be smarter. But I'm talking about, like dumb Americans and your average whatever who's just watching sports all day and Coliseuming it up like Rome and doesn't know what's going on half the time, like the guy at the sports bar. That's how they thought. And as a result of thinking that way, education became less and less of a priority, and they handed over the school system because, well, it doesn't matter. You go and you just become this, or you'll go and you'll become that. You learn a trade here, you do this, you do that. Whatever, you'll be fine. And they slowly handed over the education system to communists and Muslims who infiltrated and indoctrinated and dumbed down, and that's exactly what they did. The communistic Islamic system didn't just infiltrate with the ideologies of socialism, communism, and Islam, but they also removed any form of education when it came to history and understanding things like geography, history, tiny little small things. When the Civil War started, these tiny little things. They, why does that matter? It's not even a big deal. Who cares? And when they put that idea into people's head, yeah, why does that matter? Who cares? And then they latch onto that slowly but surely over time. They become they lose the ability to think for themselves. They can't connect dots to why it's a bad thing for the USSR to have missiles in Cuba because they don't even know the simple geography of the fact that Cuba is 100 miles off the coast of the United States. And that means that they could bomb the U.S. pretty easily. They don't think that way because they don't know anything about geography. They don't think. We shouldn't have socialism or the Patriot Act in 2001 after 9/11 because Benjamin Franklin said those who are willing to trade their freedom for security deserve neither. They don't think like that because they don't know their founding fathers or what they did. They don't think George Washington said, in his farewell address, do not create political parties. Because all they will ever do is divide the nation. So they create political parties. They don't think. They think because of a lack of education, a lack of history, Donald Trump's tariffs are such a terrible, horrible thing. They're going to make the whole country crash. Because they don't know that there was 150 years of history in the United States of America where tariffs were the only form of income for the entire government. They don't know these things. They just don't know them. They don't think, why would you go to war with the banks? Why would you go against the Federal Reserve? Because they don't know Thomas Jefferson said, do not create a federal bank. Because if you do, the bankers will eventually, through inflation and then eventually deflation, buy up all the property from your sons and daughters, and then your kids will die as slaves on the continent they conquered as free men. Direct quote from Thomas Jefferson. They don't know that because they don't know history. So they don't understand that the Founding Fathers were against socialism. The Founding Fathers were against property taxes. The Founding Fathers were against income taxes. There's no such thing as an income tax in America. The Founding Fathers were against all taxes. It's kind of how the whole thing started. It's why no taxation without representation. Remember that? They don't understand that the Founding Fathers were against political parties. They don't understand the Founding Fathers were against a national bank. They don't understand that all the problems that they have in the United States of America right now as a whole are a direct result of ideologies that were born and based off of being the opposite of what the Founding Fathers created and instituted, and not as a prerequisite fruit of what the Founding Fathers created and established. So now you have a whole group of people that don't know anything about that, so they say, we should just get rid of the Constitution. And you say, why do you want to do that? Well, because it's the reason this whole thing is burning to the ground right now, and that's got to be because the foundation is faulty. And it's like, well, no, that's not the problem. The problem is that when you started building, you didn't build the building to be in alignment with the foundation it was built on, so it makes the whole thing wobbly. The problem is that you got to destroy that building and go back to the roots and build it up from where it originally was meant to be founded. That's how you fix it. They say, well, what about inflation? Oh yeah, Thomas Jefferson. That's because you disobeyed the foundation of the country and created a bank, a Federal Reserve. Oh, what about them coming in and spying on everyone? Oh yeah, that would be called Benjamin Franklin. That's because you ignored when he said, we don't give up freedom for security or you deserve neither. Oh, what about the division? Oh yeah, that would be George Washington when he said, don't create political parties because they'll only ever create division. The Founding Fathers gave you a blueprint that literally solves every single one of these issues, but the only problem is that 70% of Americans don't even know the blueprint that they gave because they don't know their history. And as a result of that, you have all of this, which is all the result of, it's not a result of the foundation and following that foundation and that Constitution. It's a direct result of actively pursuing the exact polar opposite of what that foundation and Constitution created. Meaning that we wouldn't have these problems if we did what the Constitution said. And that's the real problem. And, well, I can't afford a home. Why not? Well, because of the bankers. Because of what? Because of mortgages and banks and inflation and property taxes. And all of that is in direct polar opposite to the Founding Fathers. Because there was no national bank, there were no mortgages, there was no property taxes, and there was no inflation. And it was all backed up by gold. So the dollar never lost its value. All of that has been replaced with slowly but surely stepping away from the foundational principles that have created this mess. The only way to fix it is to go back. But they say, no, what we got to do is we got to go further beyond. We got to get even further away from the foundational principles. We got to go completely into socialism or completely into communism. Because they don't know anything about Karl Marx. They don't even know what Karl Marx is. Or that he was a Satanist. A lot of people don't know that either. Karl Marx was an atheist. Karl Marx was a Satanist. He wasn't an atheist. They say he was an atheist. No, Karl Marx actually wrote a lot of books, not just the Communist Manifesto. He wrote a lot of books. One of them was actually a book about hell. Quite literally, he wrote a book about hell, and he quoted in his book, he quoted this section from a play he was writing. He's a playwright too, interestingly enough, and he quoted this section from a play that was talking about hell, and it was dedicating itself to the devil. And he goes into detail talking about, he quotes it, and then he goes out of his way and says that this book is dedicated to the entity that was mentioned in that play, which is the devil. That's a direct quote from Karl Marx. I'm going to have to actually go and find the exact quote and say it word for word and show you where he got it, because everything I just said is true, but if I don't go and grab it and spell it out right in front of your face, people are going to be like, oh, yeah, well, I know it's hearsay. Even though it's not. But when they say something about Donald Trump saying that he wants the rich to have everything and the poor to have nothing, that's not hearsay. They take that word like it's gold. Yeah. Because they're a bunch of idiots. I mean, no offense, but they're just dumb. I literally had a woman look at me and she said, I heard Donald Trump say that he wants the richest to have everything and the poor to have nothing. And I looked at her like she was the stupidest person I've ever met in my life. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's absolutely no quote in the entire history of the world that you will ever find where Donald Trump said those words. And then she said, oh, well, I saw it. He was on the screen and his mouth was moving, the words coming out of his mouth. And I'm like, okay, so actually what you mean is that you're a liar. You're a pathological liar, and you think that people don't watch the news and that they're not going to know that never actually happened. You're making up scenarios inside of your mind, because in reality, that never took place. Because I can guarantee you that if you go try to look it up right now and you're not going to find it. You know why? Because it's not real. It never happened. If Donald Trump said those words, you realize that would be all over mainstream news media, right? Because they hate Donald Trump. They would use that to attack him all day long, yeah? What are you even talking about? You're just saying the stupidest things I've ever heard. But this is the group of people that vote for Democrats. People that don't know anything that's going on. People that have been subverted by the Democratic Party because they think they still believe that this is a war between the rich and the poor. They still genuinely believe that this is JFK's old Democratic Party going to war with the fat cats of the Republican right wing. No, that was 50 years ago. And just like a car looks a lot different now than it did 50 years ago, and just like a cell phone does, and just like clothes do, so do political parties, which believe that. Crazy. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so they were not being insulting when they said that. Sao Paulo and Rio girl. And then I had to educate them on American. I said, what happened is that they started getting lazy, and now American education is tanked, and it's like the same education of a third world country. They're like, I think they're in the bottom 100, actually, last time I checked. And that's the reason why Donald Trump reinstates the HB1 visas, because he feels like the people here, they don't know how to use AI correctly. And, it's all these problems. But, education is the reason why you have idiots that don't understand why mum dummy is such a problem. You need Bridget Gabriel. Thank God for Bridget Gabriel. You need to get rid of mum dummies. We don't need Muslims in power in New York or anywhere else. We got to stop them. They're going to be like the Nazis. They're going to act cool till they become the majority. Then they're going to try to kill you. They did in Lebanon. They did it everywhere. They're trying to subvert you the same way the 4 points from the guy from USSR did when he came into the 80s with Ronald Reagan and told him they're going to try to subvert you and this is how they're going to do it. It's just like one of those things. And just like the Nazis did to the Jews, and just like they always do, and it continues to go on, just like a Trojan horse is what it is. They're going to come in there and they're going to try to kill you in the middle of the night. And if you don't have education, then you're going to fall for it and you're going to die. You're going to die. It doesn't matter how dumb you think everyone else is. When you're the dumb one, it doesn't matter if you think that you're too important or you're above politics or that's way out there and it has nothing to do with me. You're going to die. It is the uneducated who die first. It is the uninformed who die first. The Bible says, my people perish because of their lack of knowledge. Yeah, it is the ignorant who die first. Okay? Because a lot of, and we get into a whole thing about that. And, I think I will, but maybe we'll save that for another episode because I think this one's been running pretty long. A whole thing about Christians that don't want to get involved in politics. I don't think that those have to do with it, but my people perish because of their lack of knowledge. So God literally just told you. You know why you're dying? You know why you guys are dying? Because they'll die, right? And then they'll say, God, why did this happen? And then God answered them. You know why you're dying? Because I gave you information and you're not listening to it. That's why you're dying. My people perish for their lack of knowledge. That was his answer. And then they say, well, I don't know. I didn't hear what he say. Well, I didn't know it said that. Well, yeah, I know you didn't because you're dying. Because of your lack of knowing what it said, yeah? Jesus is Lord. Oh, Lord Jesus. Help us all.